In this video, I'm going to show you how to do an AC performance test and show you the tools that are necessary to do an accurate performance test. You're going to find that you're going to get people, customers, drivers complain that their AC system is not cool enough. And it's kind of a relative thing. Some people are warmer blooded, it seems, and some are colder blooded. So you really have to have some sort of fixed criteria in order to determine whether or not the AC system is working as designed. So that's what I'm going to show you right now. So first off, I want to show you what a set of manifold gauges looks like. These manifold gauges are hooked up to the high and low side service ports, and their purpose is just to show you the pressure on the high side and low side of the system. You may not have a set of manifold gauges in your shop because nowadays we typically use our AC machine and the gauges that are on that when we attach it to our vehicle to tell us what our pressures are. But I wanted to show you what the manifold gauge set looks like. You may be wondering, why do they call it a manifold gauge set? Well, it used to be that the service ports were located on the intake and exhaust manifold, if you will, for the AC compressor. Just like your engine has an intake and exhaust manifold to let air in and let air out, compressors have a manifold that lets air in and air out, and that's where the service ports used to be located. All right, I want you to notice that the high side and low side pressure is the same. Okay, they're a little bit different scale on each gauge, but they both read equally because the engine is off right now, which means the AC compressor is not turning, it's not making pressure. And so at some point those pressures equalize because it is not a completely blocked off system. We have a restriction in the system. Typically it's an expansion valve, but it's not a completely blocked off system. So they will equalize. All right, so one of the most important tools you're gonna need to do this test is a thermometer. And you have to know what the ambient air temperature is. So inside the classroom right now, it is a balmy 65 degrees. Typically, your AC performance test should be done above 70 degrees, but because it's approximately 40 degrees outside today, the warmest I can get it in here was 65 without really cranking the heat up. And so we're gonna do the test at 65 degrees. You're gonna wanna know that as your baseline. If it's 65 degrees outside, how cold can we make the inside of the car? And so it's a comparison. So we're gonna take this thermometer, we're gonna walk it over to the car, and we're going to install it in the center outlet of the car. Okay, you don't have to get it really jammed in there, but you do want to get it to a point where you can read it and it's being held. To do this AC performance test, we're going to have to meet some criteria. First of all, most of the time, manufacturers will tell you to have the windows down. Some may tell you to run the engine at 1,000 RPM or maybe even 1,500 RPM. Some may tell you to idle it. I am going to link to your Blackboard a document scanned in that shows how to do a performance test on this 2013 Chrysler 200. But you're going to want to know exactly how the manufacturer of each vehicle does a performance test, because it's all a little bit different, but the end result is how cold can we make it coming out of the dash. All right, so I'm going to start the car up. The engine has to be at operating temperature, which it looks like we are. Pretty close. Okay, I know my dash says 36 because I just pulled it from outside and it hasn't updated yet. And we want to set the gauges. So if we want to see how cold they can get, we got to put our controls in the coldest position, which would be full blower motor, maximum cold. We want to stick it on the outlet, the panel outlets. We want to turn the AC on. And for this performance test, Chrysler tells you to turn on the recirculation mode to take the inside air and recirculate it to see how cold we can. Now we simply watch our gauge. So again, we started at 65 degrees and within a few seconds we're already down to 55. The rule of thumb for a good operating system is at least 25 degrees below outside air temperature. So a very good operating system might get down to 30 degrees below outside air temperature. And maybe one that's working but not working up to par would be 20 degrees. Again, if you're trying to speed this process up, you can give it a little bit of RPM to get that AC compressor spinning a little bit faster, moving more refrigerant, takes more heat out of the cabin and puts it more in front of the car. So this specific thermometer has a blue zone, which tells you, yeah, the system's working as designed, but we're going to see what Chrysler actually says about this. We're already down to 40 degrees approximately, maybe 45. And it looks like it's still dropping. So I can't imagine that too many people on a 65 degree day are going to come in complaining that their AC is not working if it's getting down to 40 degrees inside the car. It's an approximate swing of about 25 degrees. But we don't have all the information we need at this point. We need to get back out of the car and look at what our manifold gauges are saying. So let's do that. And we're going to see these gauges cycle slightly. So my low side is reading approximately 35 degrees. My high side is about 105. Again, low side 35 PSI. I don't know if I said degrees before. 35 PSI on my low pressure gauge. And 100 to 105 PSI on my high pressure gauge. And it's holding pretty steady. Again, the reason that my pressure gauges are different right now is that the AC compressor is on, and so it's making pressure on the high side. And everywhere on that high side, all the way up until the restriction in the system, right now is reading 100 PSI. On the low side, because of the restriction, we have a lower pressure. The compressor is trying to suck the refrigerant in, which makes it go lower than the high side. And you can see maybe it's up about 37 PSI right now. My high is still around 100 to 105, holding pretty steady. Let's go back in the car and see what temperature we're at. And we're about 45 degrees. All right, let's go to our chart, our service information that Chrysler's given us to determine how our system's doing. So here is our chart. And basically what it's telling us is at 70 degrees Fahrenheit, let me zoom in so you can see. At 70 degrees Fahrenheit, my outlet temperature should be between 42 and 59 degrees. Again, we're on the low side of that, so it's working pretty well. My high side pressure should be between 150 and 275 PSI. And my low side pressure should be between 31 and 53. So I think you're noticing that we fall in the area of acceptable at my outlet temperature, at my low side pressure, but my high side pressure seems a little bit lower than it should be. Most manufacturers at this point will give you a symptom-based chart. With those three symptoms, those three criteria, we can determine whether the system's working as designed or not.